what they're doing currently. So Dr. Jakub Kulic is a current radiology registrar in London, and he completed internal medicine training and holds MRCP degree. He's an exceptional person, and it's just the things that he does is amazing, and he always helps people to review their CV, make job applications, and he runs a couple of other initiatives helping people to get into radiology. So you can check that out as well if you're interested in radiology. And Dr. Erva Nurchinar is a current pediatrics trainee um, in East of England in Cambridge. And her CV, her publications, and the roles she holds is just exceptional. And she will be talking about the personal statement, and we'll be talking about structuring your CV, and I'll briefly talk about how you can utilize our platform to find, like, it's just you to make it easier for you to in your job search. So just before giving the microphone to Jakub, please fire your questions in the chat anytime, even during the presentations, and we will be going through all of them, hopefully, and there will be a Q&A session at the end. We will not be giving you a chance to speak right now during the presentations, but we will do that during the Q&A. But yeah, during the presentations, you can always just put your question in the chat. So please do that. Yeah, Jakub, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ali. I really appreciate that beautiful introduction. I'll just quickly, we will be sharing my screen first of all. Perfect. Is everyone able to see that? Are you able to see it, Ali?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Okay. So just to introduce myself again, so my name is Jakub and I'm a radiology registrar working at University College London Hospitals. Before radiology, as Ali mentioned, I was an IMT. Best decision I've made to switch to radiology. I would highly recommend it, but I'm a bit being biased there. Anyway, so today my talk will be about, it'll be brief, but it will be about the CV, how to create the optimal ideal CV for non-training jobs. You can even use it for training jobs actually, and just a bit about how to approach to what the white space answers, which a lot of people struggle in. Unfortunately, I get daily emails and calls and texts every day asking me how best to approach the white space answers, as I think this is the deciding factor for a significant proportion of applications that the NHS as an employer receive up and down the country. Speaking about NHS, as you know, is one of the biggest employers in the country, and year on year, the application amount is going up and up and up. So obviously, naturally, the competition ratio rises and becomes more and more competitive to get in, as more people are getting GMC now, and exams are being more accessible. So I want to try and, with the help of Job Clerk, I want to try and give you the best opportunity to give you the edge for you to get the job or ideal job that you want. Now, unfortunately, currently, there are two main job websites, application websites called NHS Jobs and Track Jobs. Unfortunately, these are very clunky. And what Job Clerk is aiming to do is to, with the utilization of an AI tool, to be able to automatically apply to multiple jobs with just one form that you fill in. So it makes the process much, much more easy and significantly stress-free for you. So definitely check their website out and utilize the resources as much as possible. Now, in terms of, I get a lot of questions before I go into the CV part. I get a lot of questions about, what grade should I apply for? In the NHS, there's a plethora of different grades, unfortunately, which essentially almost mean the same thing. So after the F1 year, also called internship year, the SHO, you've got the SHO level, which is essentially F2, ST1, ST2, or junior clinical fellow, or trust grade SHO jobs. And they're basically all the same thing. They mean the all same thing, SHO essentially. Anything above that, so senior clinical fellow, ST3 and above, is essentially a registrar level. So it's important when applying for jobs to make that distinction. Keeping in mind your background and putting all that together to apply for that job. Also, very key to look at the person specification, especially when you're devising your CV for that job you're applying for. Make sure you include everything in the person specification, because if you can imagine, all these employers, there's this poorly paid HR guy looking at hundreds of different of CVs, and if you're not hitting the main points that they want to see in that person specification, there's a higher chance that you won't get the job. Okay, so that's very clear and very important to be wary of. So I'm just going to show you if I can get it open, yeah. So if you go into the BMA website, there's the freely available BMA CV example. Now, can we see Ali, can you see this screen, right? Just to make sure you can see the screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. So what a lot of people unfortunately do is they write pages and pages and pages of CV, and they're long-winded. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, the poorly paid HR guy is not going to spend hours looking through the CV. So it's so important. I can't stress enough to make your CV as succinct, to the point, and clear as possible. Okay, keep it brief, keep it to the point. Always refer to the person specification. This is key. I'm going to go through the CV and also talk to you about a way how you can combine it for your training application, which is key. But what I want to say is emphasize is what Job Clerk is doing for you. So if you go onto their website and fill out their portfolio when you log in, it automatically creates you a CV very similar to this BMA CV. So it's essentially two birds with one stone. Yeah, so it really does help you. Makes life much more easier for you. Coming back to the CV, so always obviously include your GMC number if you've got BMA or Royal College membership, your name, your address, and whatnot. Profile, always, or background, keep it brief, to the point. Maybe talk a bit about yourself, your aspirations, and why you want that job, and why you're the best candidate. Just a simple line. Okay, and then you go into your medical employment. A lot of people, what they do here is they list their jobs, and talk about everything they've done. No, they don't want to see that. All they want to see is where you've worked, how many years you've worked, and your seniority. Okay, that's all that matters. And if you've had employment in other countries or whatever. So always include that. Keep it brief. Now, I just want to turn to. I'm going to give you, as an example, I'm going to give you the internal medicine training program application scoring matrix. Okay, how you should devise your CV. You should tailor it to the specialty you're applying for. So if we give IMT as an example, to apply for IMT in the UK, they've separated it into different sections. So looking at postgraduate, additional achievements, presentations, QI, teaching, leadership, and so on. And each segment has different scoring or weighting, okay, which we'll get onto in a second. I highly advise you to, in a similar way, devise your CV in such a way that it corresponds to the application scoring of the specialty that you're applying for. I hope that makes sense, and we'll go through it now. So, for example, in the education and qualifications part, apart from listing your MBBS and your any undergraduate degree, in the postgraduate section here, it's the same part again. You can list if you've done a PhD, as it scores the highest points, master's level degree, and so on. I won't go through this in detail, but essentially in that section, you can also include this. So when you're using it for training application, you've already done this part, okay? Moving on, awards and prizes. So it's so important here to list the prizes which is specific to the application you're applying for. So if you're doing an ONG, you're applying for an ONG job and you've got ONG prize, make sure you list that first, okay? As I mentioned, these people are not going to sift through your CV, read for a long time your CV. So make sure you just list the most pertinent awards or prizes you have. Obviously, if you want, you can list the others as well, but again, keep it to the point and brief. And when we correspond it to the application training application and IMT, for example, things like having a high score in your MBBS scores the highest points. If you've had a national prize related to medicine again, remember, related to the specialty you're applying for, gets just below 3 points, so 2 points, for example. Okay, so key to relate it back to the specialty. List the awards and prizes you have, and also if possible the waiting. Okay, moving on. Then the next section is things like courses, meetings, and conferences. You don't again have to list 200 conferences you've been to. Okay, again, keep it snappy, brief, succinct, to the point. If you want, list the first, most related conferences that you've been to. But not only that, as you can see in the application, the training one application, there's a section of presentations and conferences. Apart from listing the conferences you've been to, also mention if you've done an oral presentation and if you were, for example, the first or second author. What this means is if you're applying for IMT, for example, you've already scored the maximum points and you've already mentioned in your statement, okay? And remember, all these non-training job applications are actually based on the corresponding training job application. They just take a template from it and replicate it, but sort of water it down, if that makes sense. So it's so key to include in your conferences any oral presentation or poster presentation that you've done, and again, it will correspond to your training application. And then after that, list your publications. Okay, so with the publications, always list on the top if you're first author. In my opinion, list if you're first author, and then co-author, and then if you're first or last author, and then if you're co-author. Okay, you can mention mention the title and the PMID and so on. When we look at the training application, again, that's what they've done here. So the first author publication or joint first author always gets the highest points. Okay, and again, keep it related to the specialty you're applying for, guys. Yeah, so if you're applying for IMT, make sure you've got a medical related publication coming up first. If you've won, you can also, if you wanted to, mention a brief summary of it, but again, always try and keep it short and snappy and to the point. And one advice I would give actually for those of you who are looking for posters and presentations and research, if you do clinical attachments in the UK, for example, make sure you early on emphasize your keenness and motivation for research activity or QI activity or audit activity to the consultant or your supervisor. This is so keen, as this is not giving on a plate to you. You have to ask, and in the UK, how it is you have to go out your way and use your initiative and always ask. So keep that in mind. Okay. Moving on, the next section you can include then is sort of the management QRP section, and then when you correlate that to here, the QIP, an extensive QIP. Again, I won't go into the details, but an extensive QIP would get the highest points. So in the QIP section, talk about the QIP you've done or the audits you've done. Talk about your level of involvement on it, and then finally talk about the amount of cycles or if you've completed the loop of the QIP and audits. Now, QIP and audits is a different topic, but we'll do a webinar on that on another day. But essentially, mention the QIP, the title, a brief background of it, and your level of involvement, and if you've presented it locally or nationally. Okay, that's important as well. But again, keep it very brief. And then the next section should be on your teaching. So things like if you've done a teaching degree, 100% mention it, like a PG cert in clinical education or any form of degree or undergraduate, mention that here. Mention any national or international teachings you've performed in or you've held. Again, very key here. One advice I would give is those of you again who are already in a non-training job, or those of you who are applying for a non-training job, or those of you who go to do clinical attachments. If you speak to the postgraduate office of that hospital or department of the hospital, there's always teaching around. So you can always get involved in teaching and be involved in teaching in that hospital that you're working in. I'll give you a tip or a trick that I did when I was applying for radiology. For the specific teaching section, how I scored the highest point was I went to the postgraduate center and I said I want to devise a tutorial program for medical students. Okay, and then the teaching fellow there helped me with that, and we devised a 6-month program, and I spoke to consultants and registrars and myself to teach on the actual program. It's also important to get feedback from the learners from the program so you can improve on it, and also mention that in the interview. It's key. So again, all of this in the UK is all about using initiative and just doing it essentially. And then the last section you can also include is leadership. So this means sort of any leadership role you've held, undergraduate level, postgraduate level, does not matter. It can even be in sports. It can be non-medical related. It could be anything essentially. Any type of management skill you have, include it here. You can make another section or make it part of the QIP section, management section, as you like, but include that there. So what you should say is your level of seniority, your level of involvement, how long you've held that role, and the positive impact you've made. That's very key. Okay. And then the final section should just be about your interests, something different about you, something that'll make the CV stand out. You know, a lot of people obviously write languages and whatnot, but try and be different. Anything that you've done differently, include that here. And then, of course, your references. Okay. In a nutshell, in a very brief nutshell, this is what you do to have the ideal CV. Okay. As I said, you know, you can write pages and pages and pages and pages, means nothing. Always remember, quality is better than quantity. Quality is better than quantity, guys, okay? So if you have a brief, to the point CV, that will definitely stand out more, especially if it's got good quality stuff in it. And if it relates to the job application, if it relates to the person specification and speciality, even more of a chance that you'll get the job. Okay, and as I mentioned, we'll go for the job clerk website again. If you fill out your portfolio, all this is already done for you using an AI algorithm, or will be done for you using AI algorithm, will help you do this. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. Just to go back to my presentation, that was just a brief intro into top 10 tips on the CV. The other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, white space answers for your applications. Now, this is key. I think this is the crux of the problem why most applicants cannot, you know, land their ideal or the job they want. I get countless amounts of text messages, emails, whatever, saying, you know, look, Jakob, I've you know, applied to hundreds of jobs. What's my problem? Can I send you my application? Look at it. So they send it. I look at it, and what I find is a plethora of errors. Apart from, you know, grammar mistakes and all this and that, some of the really bad things that they do, or things that they shouldn't be doing in an application. Number one being they list stuff. Never, ever, ever list, guys. That's the worst thing you can do. For example, someone I remember reading says, you know, I'm an excellent leader. I'm an excellent manager. I'm a, you know, wonderful communicator. This means nothing, guys. This absolutely means nothing. In the UK, what they care about is, okay, you've got a skill. Show us, you know, give an example of that. So mention skill. For example, you can say you're a good communicator, okay? Give an example of why you're a good communicator using your clinical background. So it could be in your clinical past, on your recent clinical rotation, okay? Stay in the same paragraph. I'll give you an example as well a bit later on, why you're a good communicator, giving that example. Reflect on it, how it's made you into a better doctor. And, you know, round it off by saying why that communication skill that you've built up upon and you're good at makes you the ideal candidate, guys. Okay, so make a point, give an example, relate it back to the job, and emphasize why you're the ideal candidate using that skill, guys. So these 4 things, okay, that's very, very key. Never list. Don't sound overconfident. A lot of people sound overconfident, and that's a big no-no. Okay, I've seen applications, people writing, oh, I look after 500 peoples in a night. That's very unsafe. If a consultant says that, you know, they'll automatically be having bells ringing in their mind saying, you know, this guy is obviously unsafe. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And yeah, don't do that at all. Don't sound rude at all in your application. In the UK, there's a big push to a multidisciplinary team. We have other types of healthcare professionals who help us provide better patient care. So never belittle or sound rude, okay? As I mentioned, always relate back to the answer the question. Give an example, reflect on it, and demonstrate how you've become a better doctor, okay? And to give the icing on the cake, you know, you can even talk about in your answer how you can relate that back to your good medical practice as per the GMC and the person's specification. Doing this is way, way better, much better than just listing stuff. This is what employers care about, okay? This is what sets you aside. So it's very key, guys. Another big mistake a lot of candidates make is they don't structure their answers. This is a bit, maybe it's because of the background or the education system that you've come from, but unfortunately, a lot of the answers are not structured at all. And in the UK, everything's quite structured as you can imagine. So they want to see a sort of structure to your answer. So one book that I highly recommend, I don't know if you can see this, is the ISC medical book, and talks about different types of interview techniques and application techniques. And all the interview techniques here you can use in the white space answers. Giving you a simple example of the CAMP technique, maybe a few of you have heard of this. Any questions that relates to background, motivations, aspirations, you use the CAMP technique. So your first paragraph will be about, your daily medical practice. Give an example of a skill that you've picked up in your clinical practice. Reflect on it. Give an example of how you reflected on it, how it's made you a better doctor, and then tie it in with why you're the ideal candidate. Okay, so important to do that. Similarly, in the academia, management, and personal sections, if you read this book, okay, and then structure your answers, as I've shown you, for example, it will definitely give you the extra edge, and you come across as more of a serious candidate, a candidate that knows what they're talking about. Okay, so just to give you an example of something along the lines of that I had written when I was applying for radiology. So this question is, why do you want this job or training? So again, I've sort of separated it up according to the CAPM technique. So first paragraph being about clinical. So I've said here, rotating through multiple specialties during my foundation and core medical training has allowed me to appreciate the importance of imaging in helping diagnose patients. As a core medical trainee, I have developed key decision-making skills. For example, prioritizing and escalating unwell patients. On my radiology test week, I similarly observed the radiology registrar vet and prioritize imaging requests. Already having skills where I'm able to work well under pressure makes me an ideal radiology candidate. So already you can see I've used my clinical background, I've given an example, I've related that skill that I've developed to the specialty I'm applying for, and I've reflected. Okay, do you see how I've done all those 4 things, and I've emphasized that just in one paragraph? This is much better than just listing stuff like there's no tomorrow. Okay, and similarly in the academic and the teaching section, I've done very similar things. Yeah, if you have a read, I've done very similar things. Give an example, reflect on it, tie it back to the specialty, and explain why you're the best candidate through your explanation, obviously. Yeah. So just going back to very briefly to the Job Clerk website. So as I said, this is extremely user-friendly, way better than the NHS Jobs website. You log in, you click onto my portfolio, and then you fill it in. Okay, so qualifications, so your registration, your work experience, your employment, your references, the courses you've been on. You can simply just add it from here. As I've mentioned, your prizes and presentations, prizes and teaching and so on. And I'll give you another example for here. Just make this big. So this part pertains to the white space answers. So any of the white space answers you provide here will automatically, essentially, later on make you a CV where you can download, and this is used for your application, and the AI tool helps you for this. So, for example, what I've said here is, for this teaching question, please provide details of your teaching experience. So what I've said is, teaching has been my passion since an early part of my career, and a key skill to have for any radiologist. So I've stated, just made a statement, my passion for teaching. Completing a PG cert in clinical education and a fellowship of higher education at Edinburgh University during foundation training, I learned a variety of different teaching skills to cater for different learners to meet their needs. So I've given a bit of background, my passion for teaching, and how the skills I've learned from doing a PG cert in clinical education, and how I'm utilizing it in my daily job. And then the next paragraph, I give an example of how I done that. As the associate coach tutor for RCP, I've used my listening and problem-solving skills to improve junior doctors' work life. For example, I realised the lack of teaching for CMTs. Therefore, I set up and led a fortnightly teaching programme and arranged catering for attendees by using drug companies. Through feedback and reflection on these sessions, I've developed my leadership and team working skills in making further successful teaching programs. Again, automatically I tick all the boxes. I've made a statement, given an example, reflected on it, and tied it into the application, okay, and related it to later on when you read it, related it to the radiology application. So this is essentially what you have to do, okay. Similarly, in the audit section, audit QAP, you tap all of that in here, and then additional, some of the applications ask for an additional information with regards to leadership. I've given a very similar, quick answer, and again on teamwork. Yeah, so that's essentially what I've done, guys. I hope that was a bit useful. But again, as I mentioned, it's so important to keep your answers brief, to the point, your CV. And in terms of your last-based answers, always give an example, reflect on it, relate it back to the question, explain why you're the best candidate for the job. Okay. I'm always happy to answer any questions. Do feel free to write in the chat box. Always more than happy to help. I hope that was useful.
Thank you, Jakob. It was such an amazing presentation. Actually, rather than moving on, we can take questions for 5 to 10 minutes if there is any burning questions you would like to ask, rather than asking it at the end. If you can raise your hand, I can allow you to open your microphone, or you can put it in the chat. So a couple of people asked questions. If you like to have a look, Jakob, I tried to answer. So one question was about how we can structure our CV and how we can highlight our experiences, especially when we don't have any NHS experience.
Yeah, I mean, any experience is good to talk about, even if you've had a non-medical job. In any job you do, there's leadership, there's management, maybe there's a bit of teaching, but there's definitely communication, okay? You can easily utilize all of anything that you've mentioned. I don't know, obviously, your background, but whatever you've done before, thinking about scenarios in your background, utilize that and write it into your CV or white space answers, and just expand on the way I've done. For example, I've used my clinical background and radiology and why I'm the ideal radiology candidate for the communication section, leadership section. You can do the exact same thing. It really doesn't matter. It really honestly doesn't matter. The key things are structuring it, not so much the content, but the structuring it, and how confident you come across. They want to see, is this candidate serious? Can this candidate reflect? Is this candidate safe? So it doesn't matter what background or example you give. You just have to make sure you hit the person's specifications. You're a serious candidate. You're a candidate who, so whatever skill you've given, you demonstrate in the answer.
Thank you. So there are 3 questions about person statement and supporting information. The next presentation is going to be all about person statement. So thanks for your patience. At the moment, the question we can ask to Jakob is, it says from Zain, it says, being a junior doctor, I don't have any teaching experience or audit. How should I answer these questions? So as in the track jobs, you can either select no and just move forward, or you can select yes, and even though you don't have any experience, you can mention what you would like to, how you'd like to improve yourself.
Exactly, but I would also highlight and just say, is this person an F1? Did you say, Ali? This person.
It's a junior doctor.
Okay, I'm sure at some point in your clinical attachment, a medical student, you must have had some sort of student accompanying you on the ward round or something. Even small interactions like that on a ward round, you had a medical student alongside you. There was an interesting topic. You gave them a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation on the patient you assessed. Even things like that, if you mention that in your CV, that is still good. It still shows initiative. And if you can put the points that I've mentioned, things like communication, team working, management inside that, even more of a bonus. So don't think that because you don't have anything formal, you can't put it into your application. You can still put anything into your application. It's just how you come across and how you put it.
Thanks. Another question. Again, sorry about not answering supporting information person statement questions. We're gonna start that presentation in 5 minutes. Another question is about interact jobs. They ask about brief description of job in employment history. Should we put bullet points or make paragraph to explain our duties? So this is the part candidates ask about what were the responsibilities and duties in that job.
Yeah.
So
Again, I
yeah,
wouldn't really list. I would give brief description what you've done, a brief description, maybe a paragraph or two paragraphs. And honestly, that part, a lot of people don't. From my experience, what I've seen, a lot of people don't really read.
yeah,
You know, if you consider the whole application, that part gets minimal. I'll be honest with you. It's the other sections that they really care about. Obviously, mention your seniority level, what you've done up to date, but I'll try my best to stay away from listing. The moment someone sees listing, already they're like, oh my god, their attention span, just stops. Yeah.
yeah. No, thanks. So another question is from Timmy. It says, if you are listing a clinical attachment on your CV, how do you present it briefly on your CV? I think what I've seen, what I can answer from my points, looking at lots of track job applications, most of people put into the work experience, and this can work actually, because there is an option that you described as an observership rather than a permanent or contracted job. So yeah, you can put into your CV as a work experience or as a like different section of observership. But if you're talking about track jobs, you can definitely put into your work experience part. Another question, a quick one I can answer is who can be the reference in CV? Should it be from UK? No, absolutely not. It's all about showing references for the last 3 years. If you just graduated, obviously you're just gonna put someone from your medical school. And if you're already working in your home country, whoever is your supervisor, whoever is your senior who can give a reference, that should be fine. The other question is, yeah, if you can answer, it says, it's from Saida. What should be put into the list of procedures? I know it should be catered to the job being applied to, but what should it really include in 8 things only?
I didn't catch the last part.
Sorry, it says, I know it should be catered to job being applied, the
Yeah.
procedures, but what should it really include in 8 things only? Because the limit is 8
Yeah. So the
in
most
terms of
pertinent,
procedures.
yeah. Again, it depends on the type of job application. The most pertinent type of procedures, I guess. But the thing is, I think some applications allow you to submit a logbook. So if you make a logbook of your procedures that you've done, I think that's more useful than just listing 8 or whatever it is, as an additional part of your application. You can just say refer to logbook, and it's a bit nonsensical they do that anyway. Just 8 procedures, it means nothing.
Yeah,
But the most
yeah,
pertinent
what,
part,
yeah,
unfortunately, I can't give you a clear answer, but it's just the most pertinent part, and it's very
yeah,
subjective. It depends on the application.
yeah. Most of the time, what people do and what's the ideal thing is putting the common procedure you would perform as a medical doctor in the UK would be cannulations,
Yeah,
blood
FT competency
gas,
stuff.
yeah, things like that, venipuncture, maybe even catheterization and things like that. If you have like an NG insertion and other procedures, that will be also good. Another question is in track application for jobs employment history. What if we are applying for our first job and haven't had any past employment history? What should we write? What I can say is um, you must have done an internship to get a GMC registration. And if you haven't done that as well, that's fine. You will not put anything. But 99% of the time, if you have a GMC full registration, you must have done an internship, so you can put the internship there.
Yeah, and just write like
Um,
worst case scenario. Just write you were in medical school, or like if you
yeah,
just graduated.
yeah, definitely. Another question is, there are usually many things in person specification. Given examples and discussing each one of them would be very cumbersome. Again, sorry about that. We're just gonna start the person specification and person statements presentation in a second. We're just answering questions about CV right now. The Pleb Dreamer question is, if my referee whom I work with back in country is currently in the UK, which address should I provide in the reference detail column? The current UK address or the old one? Generally in the reference, they ask for the employment address, or obviously most of the time, also the reference address. It all depends. It all depends on your circumstance, and you can definitely put the UK address. They don't care what's the address. The only thing they care is the dates are correct, and
Exactly.
that person will reply to the email. So put an email and make sure that person will apply. But it's not the part of the application process, that I can tell you. What kind of skills are important to list on your CV? I think this is similar to the procedures, isn't it? In terms of the
Yeah.
skills, you
I would
can,
say
yeah,
whatever is in the person's, because obviously they're looking for the skills in the person's specification. So I would go by the person's specification, whichever type of skill, whatever type of skills that they've highlighted or emphasized, I'll mention those the most.
yeah. The next question is, can we repeat the words they put in the essential and desirable criteria into our supporting statement, or should we rephrase? Again, we're gonna talk about this in a second. Sorry about that. But we will go back to these questions after the presentation. So please bear with me. We don't have a lock culture in my country. Should I estimate the amount of procedures I did? Yeah, that's a very common thing, I think, what we experience. And obviously, yeah, estimation is okay. They don't chase, they don't
Yeah,
fact check.
no one really cares.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also if you're
And
coming from a surgical background, if you've listed I've done 500 procedures, no one's going to allow you even to operate on day one, because they don't really care about your previous procedures. They want to see how
yeah,
you are in the job.
yeah. I'm gonna look at the questions right now, and then we will move on to the supporting statement. And other questions about the logbook. Yeah, you don't prove. They don't ask as a they don't ask you to prove anything. So the thing about the logbook, Jakub mentioned, if they ask in the application, which is generally very rare, and if you have one, you can put it, but it's not necessary, or it's not something you should be worried
Yeah,
about. It
exactly.
says another question: should we put clinical attachment in the employment history? Yes, we answered, and yeah, you can definitely do. How many references should be given ideally? As long as it covers the last 3 years,
Yeah,
even one fine, or you can put five. It's all about covering the last 3
yeah,
years.
exactly.
And another question, will they look down on your application if you don't have UK reference? Reference is not part of the application process.
Yeah. Can I just say reference part? Okay, there's a big misconception. You know, if in the UK, this is how it's seen. Once you get your offer, the reference is there only to confirm who you are and to make sure you're not like a criminal or anything like that. That's it. It like in the reference, it never asks, "Is this doctor?" It doesn't ask about your background or anything like that. It's not like how I've got friends in America, and to get jobs in America, you need good references. You really, big you up in the reference for you to get the job. It's not like that, guys. The reference that they asked for here. It's just to confirm who you are, to confirm you've done this job for the past 3 years, whatever job you've done. That's it. So don't sweat over references that much.
Thank you. Asha Kumari, your question about personal statement, we're just going to start the presentation now, and I'm going to take the last question. Last question is, I have done my post-graduation in ENT from India. Should I apply for non-training jobs or specialty register? For non-training jobs, today concentrate on CV and chances. So non-training jobs, and we can talk about non-training, what is non-training job and not training job. But right now, if only thing you can do is applying to 9 training jobs are not taking applications, and specialty registrar is just a title. It's not the same thing. It's still
Yeah.
a non-training job, but the title is specialty registrar.
Yeah. Can I just say as well?
Now,
It's a very subjective thing. Obviously, I don't know your background, but it's always good, I would say personally, to start a non-training job, before applying for a training job, guys. Why? I've seen a lot of IMGs who apply for jobs, get a training job, whatever, and then realize because they don't know the system in the NHS, they end up in a bit of a trouble. It's always nicer to have a few months of NHS experience so you know the system and then applying for a training job. That's just my personal opinion. It's just, to avoid GMC and things like that happening. Just my personal opinion.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jakub. Yeah, let's move on to the next presentation. It's all about personal statement. Floor is yours, Arwa.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you.
But I don't think my presentation is shared at the moment. Is it?
Not yet.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's a yes. If not, yeah, okay. So before I start, thank you so much for giving me the space to talk here. Before I start, I just wanted to say a couple of things about a couple of questions, because I had some similar experiences, I think. I did an attachment before I start my training job. That attachment was actually done after I got my acceptance from my first non-training job. I had a bit of time for all this documentation process, like all these NHS admin stuff. And I thought, while I am applying, waiting for my job start date, I could do an attachment in neonates because I was interested in pediatrics back then as well. And I did still put that experience even in my training job application as well. I think you should always put your attachment experience on your job applications. And the other thing is that in terms of the procedures and the skills that you gain from your work experiences, I think when we usually forget very simple things sometimes, even if you were only an intern, undergraduate intern, and you didn't have any previous job experience before starting to work in the NHS, you can still talk about, how you gained history taking, clerking patients, and how you gained skills about clerking patients, history taking and examining them, and maybe cannulas and putting a urinary catheter in a patient. These sort of things are still accepted as skills, so just don't forget to talk about this skills and don't underestimate them. So it's as Jakub says, all about how you come across. So just make sure, just go through all your experiences, think about them, and then try to put them and sort of like reflect on them. Okay, so I'm just gonna start on my presentation now. My name is Arva. I'm a pediatric trainee based in Cambridge now, and I'm gonna talk you through a sort of like a very simple tips about writing a good personal statement. As you can understand, it's a very important first step as we apply for the jobs in the NHS. And I think most people think that they have actually covered all the skills they have when they fill up the CV section on the job page, the application page, and they don't actually need to, and they think they don't actually need to share all these details again when writing a personal statement, but it's not actually true. The system here in the UK and the employers do care about how you reflect those experiences on your personal statement, and they also care about whether you are aware or you have the transferable skills for the job. Doesn't matter whether they are relevant or irrelevant. They want you to reflect on the experiences you got previously, and they want you to mention that transferable skills that you can use in that job. While some of the people, I think, do not put any details they should be putting at all, some people do actually write everything on their statement to try to impress the employer or the people reading through these statements. As Jakub said, most of the people are just preferring to list things, but it's actually very wrong because people here in the UK expect you to reflect on things. Okay, so in most, I think, cases and scenarios, you wouldn't even need to mention certain things on your CV. We'll just go through a couple of things regarding that. And I also appreciate, and you should appreciate too, that these sort of like skills in writing a personal statement do not come to anyone suddenly. It will improve by the time when you practice. So my advice would be for you to maybe to go through others' personal statements that applied for the jobs in the NHS before, and maybe before we dive into details, I would say if you have anyone around you working in the NHS or anyone you trust their judgment and skills in writing such things, try to get their advice on the statements you write, and as somehow they would change your statement or whether they would have any feedback on them. Okay, moving to the first slide. So I will just talk about a little bit about the length of the personal statement. So just make sure that when you write a personal statement, make sure that it's just very concise. Generally, my advice, personal advice, would be to keep it maximum to 500, 600 words. I wouldn't care about what the job description says. Some of them say that you can have up to 1,500 words in a job in a personal statement, but you shouldn't be using all the word allowances just because you have them. I think it should be maximum to 500 to 600 words. You always need to remember that people reading through those statements are just looking at the key things on that statement, and they don't have enough time to cover all these aspects when they read through the personal statements of every applicant, and they get hundreds of applicants these days for any sort of like simple non-training NHS job. I will remove unnecessary details. I just try to give an example here for you to just have a sort of like a little bit concrete idea about it. So in the example here, as you can see, I will just read through the first statement if that's okay. So it says, in my previous role at the healthcare facility or any sort of like hospital, I was assigned the responsibility of overseeing and managing a team of healthcare professionals, including doctors, nurses, and support staff. For example, here, you don't need to say that when you say healthcare professionals, you don't need to cover that it's actually meaning doctors, nurses, and support staff. You can just briefly say that you just manage a multidisciplinary team, and it will mean that you manage a team which included doctors, nurses, and other staff members in your team. And it just basically continues and I was actively involved in the coordination and implementation of various patient care initiatives and programs, all of which significantly contributed to the improvement of overall patient satisfaction and outcomes. As you can see in the second statement below, I just basically summarize it to a way saying, I led a multidisciplinary team and coordinated initiatives that improved patient satisfaction and outcomes. As you can see, we removed almost 2/3 of the words here, and this created more space to describe maybe one of the initiatives you actually took, led in detail. But basically, just remember that all these experiences that you are going to describe in here is going to be relevant, mostly relevant to the person's specification or skills that are expected from you. But just try not to use more and lots of generic says and statements in your personal statement. You don't need to say that implementation of various patient care initiatives and programs. You can say that basically initiatives that improve patient satisfaction and outcomes. Just try to be brief in your generic statements. In terms of length, again, I would say, as I will just repeat what Jakub said, but just focus on quality over quantity. So just another example here. So it just says in the first statement, throughout my academic journey, starting from my undergraduate studies to my postgraduate specialization, I engaged in a variety of coursework and extracurricular activities, including joining multiple student organizations, participating in community service projects, and attending numerous conferences and workshops. I wouldn't keep it that long. I would just say something like variety of coursework and maybe just extracurricular activities. And I would just jump into saying something like, to enhance my skills and knowledge in areas directly applicable to the NHS role. And then I would start summarizing those experiences that might be relevant to the skills that are expected from me. So you don't need to just put all these sort of like bullet points in your sentences. Just try to keep it very brief. just the necessary ones, just remember that one. And I appreciate at the same time that it's a little bit about the language as well. And this is why I would advise you to use AI assistants on the Job Clerk website, because I can easily resonate with it. I was initially struggling with my personal statements too, just to keep them summarized and not to make a list of my experiences, because I always thought the employers will just be impressed by the list of my experience. But then later on, I just found out that it's just all about reflection. The Job Clerk AI assistant is just preparing you a sort of like statement, which is up to 500 to 600 words, and it just keeps it concise. And I think the most advantage part of using it is just the language and the words it chooses, because I am aware that and appreciate that it's just the biggest disadvantage we have as the IMG doctors in the NHS while we are applying for the jobs. So in terms of starting and finishing parts, I would say start strong to your personal statements. Begin with a very strong opening that grabs the reader attention. I mean, that could be a personal thing or sort of like an experience that you are very proud of, but instead of saying something like working with kids or children is interested, so that I am just applying for that job, just make it sound a little bit more niche, if that makes sense. So I just wrote an example here just to kind of correct this statement. It says, from early experiences with pediatric medicine, my passion for pediatric surgery has grown, assuming that person is applying for the pediatric surgery jobs. I'm excited to apply for the pediatric surgery position at this hospital, eager to contribute my skills to the care provided by this trust, for example. This is not a place that you need to keep it very concise, I would say. Just try to be impressive in here and try to make a very compelling start to your personal statement. You need to show that you are passionate about the job. And also, when you say such things like from early experience, then you actually prepare the reader or the person going through your statement that you will start explaining those experiences one by one below in your personal statement. Just try to make a sort of like strong start, and then prepare the reader that you are going to start explaining how you gain the skills that are required from you. Sorry. So describing experiences. So in the main part of the statement, the most thing that you are going to do is just to describe describe your experiences, skills, and achievements. Definitely show examples to showcase your suitability for the role. So in the first example we got here, it says, I have experience in pediatric surgery from my previous job. I have good communication skills and work well in a team. I believe these qualities make me suitable for this role. And it doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest, when I just read that sentence, because everyone can say that they have this skills, this skills, and the skills that are required from the job description or the employers, but it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't mean anything when you just don't give an example of it, or when you don't prove how you got those skills. Instead of saying such things, I would say just say, give an example of the experience that you got and that you think is relevant to your acquired skills from the experience, and then basically start saying things like, I have good communication skills, I work within a team, and I am compassionate, and I am respectful, and I am approachable, these sort of things. So in the second example I wrote here, it says, my experience in pediatric surgery during my previous job, as definitely state your role if it's relevant, exposed me to a range of cases, including whatever the case it is, where I successfully collaborated with multidisciplinary teams to achieve positive outcomes. This experience honed my communication skills, ensuring effective interaction with patients, their families, and colleagues. Additionally, my involvement in you should be putting a specific involvement or could be a project or sort of like a leadership or anything that you might think relevant, showcases my commitment to advancing pediatric surgical care, a quality I am eager to bring to the pediatric surgery position at the hospital. So definitely make sure that you just give an example that basically gave the skills, example of the experiences that gave those skills to you. For example, if they might just, so what I do is just a very, very personal tip here. What I do is I always, when I apply anything, doesn't have to be a non-training job, doesn't have to be a healthcare job. When I apply something, I always just open the person's specifications of the job description and copy and paste it on the page that I'm writing the personal statement on, and mark them as I just basically mentioned them on my application personal statement, if that makes sense. For example, they might just mention something like resilience on the job description. They might expect you to have resilience for that job, because it might be a very challenging job environment, might be a very sort of like busy hospital. I will definitely touch base on that. Something like in my previous experience, for example, I encountered difficult cases on a daily basis, as I work in a very busy hospital or maybe a tertiary center, and then this shows that I am resilient even in stressful environment as expected by this role or by this job position. Definitely give an example about how you got those, because it's very, very important. So order of experiences, I think Jakub has just briefly mentioned it as well, but I always start with my most recent or relevant experiences and work backward, if that makes sense. When I group my experiences relevant to the job position, I always start with the clinical experience first. If it's a pediatric job, for example, I just briefly summarize my training role so far, sort of like whether I just worked as an SD1, SD2 in different hospitals as a pediatric trainee, and then the skills I got from this training along the way, and then academic achievements. If you have got any sort of like research experiences, that could be a quality improvement project as well. Audit experiences, I would include in the academic achievement section, and then in the next section, I will definitely mention about relevant skills or certifications that might be about teaching skills, leadership skills. Again, which one is more, choose the most relevant one to the job application. The main thing is don't jump into the other section with no connection, if that makes sense. Ensure a smooth flow from one point to the next and try to connect those highlights in your personal statements. It shouldn't be sounding very robotic, if you know what I mean. And try to make it very sort of like flowing, very smooth. And again, focus on reflection. And even if you think that your experience is not relevant, focus on the transferable skills. Before the training, pediatric training, I didn't have any pediatric job experience. I always worked in emergency departments. One of them was a kind of mixture of adult and pediatric emergency department. The other one was just purely adult emergency medicine. But I always I got some skills from that the experiences, and I just reflected on them, said such things like, I got sort of like skills in sort of like clerking patients, managing difficult scenarios, acutely unwell patients, and these skills are going to be highly benefited when I'm a pediatric trainee. So try to make them relevant to the job application. So I think the title of the slide is not exactly correct here. Sorry. The thing that I just wanted to mention before we finish is just, I think, try to strike a balance between confidence and humility. It is not the best thing to sound very sort of like don't underestimate the skills that you have when you summarize them, but at the same time, just try not to be sounding extremely confident, because safety is the utmost, the most important thing here in the UK, and you need to make sure that you are showing that you appreciate the patient safety and you put the patient first in your personal clinical practice. I mean, if you praise yourself and if you want to praise yourself, just make sure give an example for it. Just don't say that I'm just confident, I am just very successful. Don't say these things. Just definitely give an example. Make sure that if you just basically say something like you are extremely confident in leadership skills and managing things, then give an example of your leadership experience relevant to the position. Yeah, there's an example here, but I'm not going to read through it. I think we will just put that recording on the website. You can just, or maybe you can just have a screenshot of it, but you can just, I think the membership is going to be required for you to just see that recordings, but you can just watch it later. It's going to be free again. Yeah. Again, tailoring the applications, it's very important again, but it's just going to be repeat of what I said previously. Customize each personal statement for the specific role and NHS trust you are applying to. Again, the personal tip that I would give here that I already told, I think, but just I always so I always put a list of the skills required by the job position on somewhere on the page that I am writing my statement on. Then when I list my experiences relevant to the post, I try to mention and link those skills required. For example, I worked as a global leader at one of the UN youth agencies before, and the team I worked with was young people from diverse professional backgrounds and skills and cultures. So if the job application or the employer wants me to be respectful to people with diverse backgrounds, then work with mainly with a multidisciplinary team, then I always talk about this leadership experience. For example, I link the experiences I got out from this role to the job I'm applying for. And if they ask me to have, for example, if they ask me to have sort of like great time management skills, then I link experiences to the time management skills, as this role was something I did when I was last year medical student and required me to be controlling and managing everything while dealing with exams, this sort of thing. So try to make it relevant to the skills that are expected from you. So you can always mention the same things in every job application, doesn't matter, as long as you reflect on them and link to the specific skills that are expected from you again. And the last thing is just to mention how your unique skills and experiences make you an ideal fit for the particular role and the values of the NHS Trust. And that will definitely be my finishing sentence, if that makes sense again. Again, remember, be clear and use a concise language. Definitely demonstrate reflective practice. It is something that comes up by the time, I mean, when you just practice more and more, it doesn't come just suddenly, but when I was applying for the jobs and then my training application as well, I got so many feedback from so many different people. They were mainly UK based, and all the feedbacks I was given was mainly not to list the experiences I got, and I feel like those feedbacks just improve my the way I just write my personal statements. So just be careful about it. Yeah, definitely proofread truly to eliminate errors and ensure clarity. If you don't trust your English too much, maybe again using AI assistance system might be the best for you, and Ali is gonna explain how you can use it on Job Clerk system. And make sure you summarize your relevant experiences and how your skills, even if it's not relevant, how your skills that you gain from the experience is transferable to the job that you are applying for. And remember, maximum to 500 to 600 words in the job statements. Definitely not more, shouldn't be more than 1,000 words. Yeah, I think this is all I would say as sort of like quick tips in writing personal statements. I'm just gonna hand over to Ali, because he's gonna explain how you can use the AI assistance on Job Clerk system and how you can just basically use those tips easily through AI system instead of struggling alone. So can I hand over you to Um,
Oh, thank you, Arwa. It was an amazing presentation, and thanks everyone putting your questions. We tried to answer a couple of them, and I will continue with answering them in a second. First, I would like to show you what we've done and what kind of service we are providing to IMGs. So let's go through. Sorry. Okay, so firstly, maybe you can join me and we can use this as a demo together. So it's just jobclerk.com. We put into the message, and I'm gonna put it once again. So first thing first, it is in order to search for jobs, we know that it is not easy on track jobs, NHS jobs, Scotland jobs. There are different websites, and user interface and everything is just not like it's just from the another century. So what we've done here is we've developed a system that show you all the jobs, every single NHS trust job across, as you can see here, NHS jobs, track jobs. This is the track jobs job board, and also obviously there is not much of a job in Scotland, but every single job in Scotland as well as obviously, sorry, Northern Ireland. So one of the things is even before going to person statement, just this experience of job search is way much better, and it's all free. Now I'm just going to demonstrate how you can use the system to get a person statement generated for you. So obviously, what we are gonna do is, firstly, let's say there's the number of jobs that's available, and then what I'm gonna do is this is our WAS account, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna show you how you can create a person statement. So what you need to do is just select medical doctor. You can select both junior and senior, and let's say there are more than 600 jobs. And if you select junior, there are around 180. Some of them are still senior because we put some senior jobs in the junior part just because we don't want you to miss, because some people, they are in between junior and senior experiences. Anyway, let's select junior and senior, and you can select all specialities, or if you're going to apply, and that's what's my advice generally, just apply for everything as much as you can. But in Arva's case, because she's a pediatric trainee and her CV is very heavily pediatrics, and she's looking for pediatric jobs, so we're gonna look for pediatric jobs and see how we can generate a person statement. As you can see, you can sort them either by date or deadline, which is very useful. Another thing is, before going to the person statement, come here and you can open your email job notifications. Only thing you need to do is save your filters. As you can see, after you save your filters, let's go to the main page. And I'm just gonna come here, and as you can see, after you save your filters, always it will be shown here. And also if you select notifications, it will be shown here. You'll get an email every day at 7 p.m. Anyway, let's start. So this one looks good. This is the education fellow in neonatology, and you can easily see job details. You can see person specifications. There is the education experience, skills and knowledge. Obviously, if you want to get more information, you can visit the link of the job itself. We are kind of a job search meta engine. You're not applying through us. When you select apply now, we will send you to the application page, application link, or either the information link of the job itself. But the main thing is how to generate your person statement here. And I'm not gonna say, I'm gonna say the first thing I need to say is we are not advising you to use the statement and copy paste it to your application. What we are giving you is just a good start that you can use And as someone mentioned in the comments, yes, some words scream AI, but also as IMG, our writing is also sometimes not as good as AI. So sometimes AI writes better statements, sometimes we write better statements. It's all about combining them and making it more human, maybe. Anyway, when you click apply now, what it says is, would you like us to generate person statement for this job? You'll be redirected to the application link afterwards. So just now I said no thanks, but let's say yes, please. Said yes, please. Application link opened, and after you enter your password, you will do what you do normally in track jobs. But let's go to my applications part. So this is the education fellow in neonatology job. So apparently it's working on what we do is at the main time I can explain is there is a portfolio part that is very similar to track jobs with much better user interface and user experience. You put your information here, and what we do is we combine the information from person specification with your portfolio, with your CV, and then we generate your person statement with the most advanced AI in the world, which is the GPT-4 Turbo. It's not even available to public. Let's open the person statement. So what we're going to do is in a quick sense, we're just going to go through the statement and see what is our advice for you to structure, because the way the AI does is we tell the AI to do in this way, and I'm going to advise you to write in this way. So we generally start with either dear recruiter, or let's just say to whom it may concern. And always like a start, I'm writing to express my interest. Let's see, this is a screaming as AI, isn't it? As someone mentioned. Let's say my strong interest. It sometimes says strong, sometimes fervent, sometimes different. Strong interest in the education fellow in neonatology position at the esteemed Chelsea and Westminster Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. You don't even need to put the title or the job because we already know it. The unit's commitment to excellence in neonatal care and the integration of educational experience with training in neonatology resonates with my professional aspirations and experience. This is a good start, but you can make it better if you have a different template. But I like this. And let's go to the next one. So as I mentioned, it's every paragraph, it's all about a different section of the person specification. And this part, it's about your experience and your qualification. It says, having completed my ST1 and ST2 level in pediatrics, I honed, obviously, let's say I have gained, make it a bit simple, core competencies essential for middle grade roles in neonatal units. My tenure is a nice word, or you can say my position as a pediatric trained doctor has gained me or endowed me with profound insights into tertiary neonatal care. Notably, I have been immersed in the challenges and rewards of neonatal intensive care during my time in emergency medicine. I worked in emergency medicine before starting pediatric training, so it's all about what you put into your CV. And the next part is my passion for teaching and education is well documented and reflected in positive feedback received through my involvement with the Pediatric Undergraduate Regional Educators Program, where I facilitated pediatric bedside teaching session. Look, this sentence, and I'm just gonna say it there directly. It is impossible for 90% of people, even with British education background, to write it down, because it combines everything in a very, very, very well structured way. So I would definitely use the sense, even though if you don't use anything else, the good thing about this is you can just use snippets and you can use the structure. And furthermore, my engagement with CARE International as a teaching facilitator has equipped me to handle diverse educational needs sensitively. Look, this is an education fellow job. And what AI does is, after having a brief experience, it starts with the education and it talks about the education. Equally, I take pride in my research progress, having led a multi-institutional quality research project to enhance child vaccination access. And then after the research, this is the one part of the person specification. It goes to the courses and life support courses, especially because this is a post in neonatology. And what it says is, this underpins my ability to ensure the highest standards of neonatal care including resuscitation, ventilation management, and umbilical catheterization. It looks at your procedure entries. And lastly, it's another section because it's all about education and leadership. Education is kind of being a leader at the end, teaching other people my leadership experiences, it says here. And then in the last part, I'm eager to leverage my portfolio of skills, experience, and passion for neonatal care at Chelsea at Westminster Hospital with an unwavering commitment to clinical excellence and evidence-based education. I aspire to contribute significantly to the neonatology department and its mission to provide world-class care. So one question I can answer here is whether we should talk about trust values. Yes, most of the time our AI system puts and briefly mentions about trust values here. You can explicitly say your relation to the trust values, but I'm going to be honest, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to make much of a difference. But in the closing section, yeah, if you can say like a nice, if you can relate something in a very different and very unique way, do it. But otherwise, just listing the trust values is not, that doesn't really mean much. And finish that. Thank you for considering my application. And if you look at this, I'm sure it's something around 450 to 500 words. And again, what I'm going to say is, before going to question, it's all about putting good information to your CV, putting enough information to my portfolio, and we just take the rest. And then what you need to do is just go to the track jobs, and after editing it here, you can just edit it here, or you can edit it in your own computer. It just passed hit there. Another thing we do is we have a co-pilot that takes your information from my portfolio and fills track jobs automatically, which I'm not gonna go into now because we provide many other services, including CPD accredited courses for your interview and improving your CV. But our subject today is personal statement, and after you register with the system, you can explore. That will be all from my presentation. So I'm just gonna jump to the Q&A and we can go through the questions. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select the questions that asked during the Yakup's presentation about person statement and ask them to Erva. So bear with me for a second. In terms of presentation recording, as mentioned, it's going to be available on the website. Just go and register and we will share the link. Yeah, okay. So the first question is, when you are applying for jobs on track jobs, what kind of things do you put into supporting information? I think we covered this in a great detail. What is the ideal length of supporting information? Again, Erwa mentioned this.
Can I just say something about the discussion? So personal statement part, as everybody said, and as Ali said, and as we emphasized throughout this webinar, talk about the person specifications and your skills, obviously. Supporting information is anything that you haven't included in the limit of the personal statement, okay? And it can be anything extra that's not listed in the personal specification. So that's the distinction. Some people get confused, but that's the distinction.
Yeah. Cool. Please show example of showing person attributes based on trust values in person statement. What kind of example we should include? So as I mentioned, we haven't gone into detail about this because it's not always possible, and also it's not the most necessary thing. But you can do it in the last part of the statement. And what I can say is, if you use an AI system, it will do a much better job for you. Yeah, how do you demonstrate trust values? So it's I think there is a bit of an overstatement in trust values and lots of other guides, but yeah, maybe Jakub, if you like
I'll
to
just
jump in.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly. So the trust values part is very simple, straightforward. I've answered it in the chat box as well. Essentially, for example, if one of the trust values of a hospital is patient safety, for example, you just go in and give an example of where you promoted patient safety, a clinical scenario where you recognize an issue, you promoted patient safety, you gave an example, reflected on it, and relate it back to the trust values, showing them that you have that value, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the fact is you can't go through all the like 4 or 5 different values. So even if you pick one and talk about that, that would be amazing. It will just show you, yeah, you read that. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, rather than focusing on the trust values too much, I think focus on the person specifications first. If you have enough space to kind of, reflect back on them as well, you can just come back later and then put a couple of sentences about them as well. But I think the most important thing is just to cover the person specifications on the job application description. Yeah, I would say they are important, but not as important as the person specification and the skills that you are expected. Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, just a second.
Okay, I think sorry. There was another question about I think whether we can just write things in as bullet points instead of writing paragraphs, but I think Jakub has already replied to it on the chat box. I don't know where this advice is coming from, because so many people are asking that question. You probably heard it somewhere, like maybe in a sort of like live session or a sort of like webinar, I don't know, but it's just probably one of the most wrong things to do. Just make paragraphs, and I mean, use sentences, not the bullet points.
Okay, I'm looking at other questions right now. Sorry, I'm just trying to go one by one. It says, can we repeat the words they put in essential and desirable criteria into our supporting statement, or should we rephrase? Also, how should we, yeah, that second part is trust values. The first part is, can we repeat the words they put in essential and desirable criteria, or should we rephrase?
Sorry, what was the question again?
It says, can we repeat the words they put into essential and desirable criteria into our supporting statement, or should we rephrase?
I mean, you can use it as it's written on the job description as well. It doesn't matter, as long as you do it appropriately, you reflect on them appropriately. If you have a sort of like proper experience that you can reflect on it and link to the skills, or whether it's essential or desirable, you can exactly use the same words. I mean, it would seem nice to rephrase them if you can do it, but it shouldn't be a mandatory thing. I don't know if Jakub has any advice on it, but I wouldn't say you have to rephrase.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think it makes much difference rephrasing. Just use what they've given you. It just
Sorry,
makes it
Bayat,
easier.
we are muted.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it makes a big difference at all. You can, it's not here or there. Just use the whatever they've given, to be honest. And if they see that you've used it, it's usually better because they know that you've used it essentially. So don't complicate it.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I've gone through the first questions, and now I can go to the last ones. Do we use paragraphs also when mentioning number of IV cannulations we have done and whether they were independent or super? This is about actually the CV, and in the track jobs, It's not paragraphs. It just asks for numbers.
Exactly. And you can, as I mentioned, you can use the logbook for that. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Can I copy the duties of the job in employment details? Yeah, that's what it asks, duties and responsibilities. You can copy it, but just as Jakub mentioned, just don't put too much, just don't put bullet points, try to be brief. The next question from Toyin, it says, do you think they are looking for keywords when looking through thousands of applications? Because I know they won't read through, yeah.
Exactly, 100%. And especially the keywords that they've included in their application person specification. That's essentially what they look for. And if you're answering those, and if you're using those, you'll most likely get recognized.
And I think one thing I would say about this, they have a scoring criteria most of the times because they do try to be fair. I mean, I hope they try to be fair. And they do have a scoring criteria, and they do kind of score you whether you cover those essential or desirable skills on the job description. So definitely use those words and sort of like, again, reflect on them. We just keep saying reflecting, but it's very important. This is why we just keep repeating it.
All right. Sorry. The next question is, do we need to reflect on audit or teaching experience in supporting information? Again, if you have mentioned them already in the section above in track job format, would you like to answer this, Erwa?
Yeah, I can answer to that. I would say yes, if it's relevant. I mean, if you have more than one experiences, audits, QIP experiences, just choose the most relevant one, maybe relevant one to the skills. I mean the one that you can link to the skills easily. But don't think, I think I briefly mentioned that, don't think that you covered all these essential experiences in your CV section part on the job application page, and you don't need to reflect on them again on personal statement. I think you should still reflect on them and briefly explain what this is, because we always think, because we sort of like experienced, I mean, we created that project and we kind of led it and sort of, you know, was heavily involved in it, and we just know every aspect of it, but people reading it through on the job applications don't know what it was and what sort of skills do you specifically develop from it. So try to reflect on it. If you have got more than one, try to pick the most relevant one, maybe.
The last two questions, maybe we can ask Jakub. First one is, can we apply for IMT if we want to, after having training in home country? Can we apply for IMT if you want to do a training in home country?
If I understand correctly, do you mean from your home country, can you apply for IMT? Is that what it's trying to ask? If that's the question.
I think it's, can we apply for IMT if we want to do a training?
After having training in our country.
We can look at two different
of
ways.
course.
Yeah.
If you've got training in your other in your home country in IMT, you can still apply for IMT, definitely. But again, it comes back to my point of having a bit of NHS experience before training job. Personally, I just think it's a bit safer that way. You know how the system works. Having said that, some training jobs, if you go directly into it, they do provide a period of shadowing, but not all places provide that. It's a bit of a potluck situation. So just do what's safest, to be honest.
Yeah, and if you're trained in IMT, internal medicine, in your home country, you can find a nice place that can take you as somewhere between junior and senior, because that's quite common. You will start as a SHO, as a junior trainee, and then they will give you more responsibilities and you will become a matrix, and it's much safer than directly jumping to the training most of the time. And you will get compensated in a better way, actually.
Yeah.
Yep. So last, we will just ask the last, we will take the last questions. We are coming to the end of our time. So how to compensate for essential criteria of NHS experience when I don't have it? What can I emphasize on instead? I mean, this is a hard one. It's if you don't have an NHS experience, obviously you're not going to say I had. And a better way is just to make your personal statement in a better quality, just to showcase your strong experiences, strong skills, and just try to shine.
Exactly.
And at the moment, unfortunately, it's all about putting application numbers in, because at the end of the day, you are getting compared against other candidates apply to that job. It doesn't matter if you don't have the essential criteria, just apply for it. And at the end of the day, you might be the better candidate, and you're going to be the better candidate in one job. And that's going to be enough. And I know it's quite frustrating and people are very like down because of this long process after passing all the exams, but that's the fact. And also with the job clerk, what we are trying to do is make it easier for you, um, giving you all the jobs published all around the country, giving you better filters, giving you like better user experience, giving you the person statement and all other things. We also run sessions. Apart from that, I run one-to-one sessions with registered users, which you will get the booking link if you get registered. So I go through your application and give more nuanced advice. So this was a bit of a strict secret for the people who stayed for the last part.
Yeah.
And the last two questions, do
Yeah,
you have to give
I can
lots of... Okay,
I
yeah.
can take that one. Yeah. So will they ask for verification for our practical experiences? I mean, no, but you know, you said you've done a lot of supervised or unsupervised, and you don't have proof. Trust me, if you've said you've done 2,000 procedures, and if you haven't, they will pick up on that and they'll realize that. So even if you lie, you know, you'll get picked up on it. So never, you know, I will advise you to always be truthful. Having said that, they can't verify it anyway. You'll be impossible. It's just for them to have an idea of your background.
I think the other question that we had was, I think we just skipped it. Do you have to give lots of examples when mentioning teamwork, leadership, and management roles and teaching experience? Jakub, would you like to answer to that one as well?
Yeah, as in like obviously whatever parameters that they've given in the personal specification, team working, leadership, management, give examples. You don't have to give 50 million examples. Give one example, a quality example, an example where you can reflect on your own practice, an example, that one is the same example, reflecting on your own practice, how it's made you a better doctor, relate it to the specialty and why you're the ideal candidate. Just by one example is enough for each of the parameters.
Amazing. Thank you. I think so Ihsan is trying, Ali Ihsan is trying to just answer to the questions and trying to send the links to the chat box, so I will take over. But I think we have just have come to the end of the session now, and I assume we have replied all the questions. Even if we missed any, just try to reach out to us later on, guys. We are happy to just answer any questions. So we will just put our email on the chat box as well. One thing that I would say before we leave is just to apply as many jobs as you can, because I think competition is just becoming higher and higher, and sometimes you need to be quick on applying to jobs, because don't trust on the deadlines that is given to you on the job description pages. If they got so many applications, they just close it earlier than expected. So I think this is why it is also important to use different tools, such as like AI tools on the job clerk system, and different technological sort of like assistance on the job applications. So last words. Do you have anything to say? Jakub, and thank you so much. It was, I think, an amazing presentation.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. And equally, your presentation was amazing, excellent as well. So last words, I'd say I'll echo what you say. Essentially, you know, apply to as many jobs. Nowadays, for one job, there's around 300, 500 applicants. Be concise, be brief, to the point, and try and stand out from the crowd. As I explained in the white box answers, always reflect, give examples, and you know, emphasize why you're the best candidate. Use
Everyone, welcome again. This is a webinar all about NHS job applications. We know how hard it is to find your first NHS jobs at the current environment. We are a team called Job Clerk, and we will be talking about it in more detail. But I would like to introduce our very exceptional speakers first. It's just a bit brief introduction, but they can talk about a bit more about their journey and